as the pendulum swings back, we're not done with globalism yet. And so at a time when globalism is dead, I mean, it's dead. Come on, look, I mean, what's happening in China, Taiwan, Russia, Ukraine, Israel, I mean, it's over. But doesn't stop the globalist push from trying to go forward. And one of the biggest stories I saw this week, one of the scariest stories I saw this week that you need to be aware of is that the United States government wants to lay down its sovereignty to be underneath the globalists. Underneath the globalists, so the U.S. is no longer the captain of their own ship. Now, this started with Obama, okay? Obama went around, he was the first president going around and apologizing for the U.S. Obama laid us under the power of the globalists, including put us into the Paris Accord, including putting us under the UN. He brought the UN in to watch U.S. elections, okay? And as soon as Trump became elected, he went to Davos and he said, look, the U.S. is a sovereign nation. The U.S. will never lay down its sovereignty to globalists. As the president, my job is to think about America first. Now, he said, look, we'll cooperate, we'll work with everybody, but we're always going to be thinking about Americans first. So he pulled us out of the Paris Accord. And of course, that's what put the target on his back, and the globalists had to get him out. Biden, the first day back in office, put us back into the Paris Accord, back under this globalist. And now, here we are. We have the Biden administration wants to give all of our power of health and pandemic response to the WHO. The WHO, which has been proven completely corrupt, which has been proven completely incompetent, which has been proven to be under China's control. Now they want to put us under that. As member states of the World Health Organization, WHO prepared to gather in Switzerland next week and negotiate final terms of an accord that will give the WHO centralized authority over U.S. policy in the case of a pandemic. What? Wait, what? Did you get a vote on that? Did you hear anything about that? No, you didn't. Well, we want to give the WHO authority over the U.S. in the case of a pandemic. Now, luckily, we have some Republican senators pushing back on this with an effort to reinforce congressional power to authorize treaties. Now, this draft accord would be, quote, legally binding on all 194 member nations, who gives the WHO the authority to declare pandemics and submits member countries to the, quote, the central role of the WHO as the directing and coordinating authority on all international health work in areas like, lockdowns, treatments, medical supply chains, surveillance, and disinformation and false news once a pandemic is declared. Now, you might know that we're still in a pandemic in the United States, and so what's even in a pandemic anyway? So the central role of WHO, we're going to basically give them all power over lockdowns, treatments, medical supply chains, surveillance, and disinformation. Wow. 17 U.S. senators led by Ron Johnson, Republican of Wisconsin, introduced the, quote, No WHO Pandemic Preparedness Treaty without Senate approval act on February 15th. States the pandemic accord must be deemed a treaty, thus requiring the consent of a supermajority of the Senate. Other sponsors of the bill, all Republicans, of course. I'm not going to read them all out here. The WHO, along with our federal health agencies, failed miserably in their response to COVID, Senator Johnson stated. This failure should not be rewarded with a new international treaty that would increase the WHO's power at the expense of American sovereignty, end quote, Senator Johnson. But some doubt this bill, even if approved, will stop the WHO Accord from going into effect once President Joe Biden signs it. Are you listening here? The Obama-Biden administration is back doing the same thing, trying to lay down U.S. sovereignty to globalist, non-elected leaders. Currently, the United States is the largest contributor to the WHO's $6.7 billion budget. Of course, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is the second largest donor to the WHO, contributing to the 9% of its budget. So the U.S. and Bill and Melinda Gates, they're the main funders of the WHO. And it remains unclear if the Biden administration will need Senate approval for this, which is insane. How can somebody lay down our sovereignty? I mean, this is just insane to me. Now, like I said, this is not a smooth operation. Now, they're going to have control over 194 nations, but these 194 nations are breaking apart. I certainly don't think Russia or China are going to want to lay down their sovereignty to the WHO. I highly doubt that's going to be the case. So we're getting a lot of pushback on this. Now, another piece of news this week, I talked about before, Jordan Peterson is setting up a new organization to counter the World Economic Forum. So there's pushback there. That's what capitalism does. Another one I want to talk about this week, we saw Vivek Ramaswamy. He announced that he is running for president. Now, he's the author of a couple books called Woke Inc., Inside Corporate America's Social Justice Scam, and also Nations of Victims, which is dealing with identity politics. He's also the co-founder of Strive Asset Management, which was set up to work against BlackRock. And he says that America is in the midst of a national identity crisis. We embrace secular religions like climatism, COVIDism, and gender ideology to satisfy our need for meaning, yet we can't answer what it means to be an American. He emphasized the importance of merit and decrying illegal immigration and affirmative action. So he described affirmative action as national cancer. So we're seeing the pushback to this. So on one side, we have Obama and Biden, pushing us to lay down our sovereignty to globalists, and yet we have other people standing up to counter this. No, we need to cancel this. We need to push this back. This is the volatility at the top before the pendulum swings back. Now, this is getting massive, as you might imagine, massive public support. We can see another poll this week that says Americans prefer businesses stay out of politics. The majority of general election voters say they would prefer to do business with companies that do not engage in politics and tolerate viewpoints of employees and customers across the board. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? The people, you and I, we're tired of this. We don't want businesses involved in politics. We don't want what Klaus Schwab is calling the public-private partnership. We want businesses like BlackRock out. We don't want them pushing their agendas on us. And we can see this. It's happening in polls. We can see the rise up of alternative news sources. We can see Jordan Peterson rise and push back. And even Elon Musk this week came out and blasted a one world government at the World Government Summit. He says, quote, "I think we want to be a little cautious about being too much of a single civilization, because if we're too much of a single civilization, then the whole thing may collapse," he said. He praised what he called, quote, "civilization diversity." I think we want to be a little wary of actually cooperating too much. It sounds a little odd, but we want to have some amount of civilization diversity, so if something goes wrong with some sort of part of civilization, that the whole thing doesn't collapse, which is exactly what happens. You see civilizations rise and fall, and we need to have different civilizations that can compete, and so we can start to see the better way. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Mark Moss Show. I've been talking about of course, like I talk about every week, the decentralized revolution, how the world is breaking apart right before our very eyes, and we're seeing it. Russia, Ukraine, in the Middle East, Iran, Israel. We're seeing it with China and Taiwan. It's happening, and it's happening fast. That's what I got today. I appreciate you listening. Send me a message. Let me know if you're listening, and any questions you have. Until next time.